next speaker is Liana Dalton, who's representing Teamsters International. Liana?
Hi, everyone. Good evening, brothers and sisters. That's definitely a hard act to follow. Thank you so much, Brother Chris, for your bravery and the powerful words that you just shared. I think that message definitely is really important to get out, and I appreciate you sharing your story. I think, you know, just like you said, the Amazon's monopoly power, it's kind of the poster child for what's wrong with our current economic system with you know, racialized capitalism. Just since the onset of the pandemic, Amazon's worth has skyrocketed to over $1.5 trillion. And, you know, obviously that's on the backs of folks such as Chris and his coworkers. And with its monopoly power, Amazon is fundamentally changing the nature of work in the US and globally, and has a huge impact on many industries. And so obviously it's something that the entire labor movement needs to take very seriously and address. Just from our perspective, for example, there, you know, over the last few years, Amazon, it used to be that all of the packages went out either through UPS or the Postal Service or FedEx to some extent, and some small couriers. But now, over the past few years, Amazon's been developing out its own last mile infrastructure and using contractors that are, of course, you know, limited in terms of their rights and benefits, and also getting paid way less than other drivers doing similar type of work in the industry. What has that meant? It's also meant that, you know, UPS and the Postal Service have had to take on Sunday delivery. It's meant that, you know, Amazon's constantly attempting to drive down standards for these other workers. And we're seeing the same impacts in the warehouse. So, you know, high quotas and more automated technology in grocery and other warehouse facilities. And due to these unrealistic quotas, the grueling work environment and stressful conditions, Amazon warehouse workers were hurt on the job at a rate more than twice that of the industry average last year. And it's not just in the logistics industry that Amazon's having an impact, or that we see this sort of Amazon effect. We see it in air, freight, retail, movie. They have their hand in everything. AWS is hosting probably some of these calls that we're on. And in some way it's touching our daily lives in so many different ways. And then, you know, it was brought up earlier in the introduction, and it's impacting public sector workers too, because Amazon's getting all these tax breaks that should be going to public services and are instead subsidizing the richest man in the world. And so I think lastly, the impact on members in our communities, especially communities of color, as Brother Chris already mentioned, the surveillance technology, contracts with police department, impact on environmental justice communities through their air and last mile operations, are all things that we have to take very, very seriously. And so as Teamsters, we have been supporting workers to organize within many different multinational companies in the logistics industry over the last few decades, obviously. And, you know, there, as everyone knows here in the labor movement, there are serious limitations to US labor law and a facility by facility NLRB election approach to organizing, especially in terms of building power against massive multinational companies like Amazon or other big companies. It's like we have to think more creatively, and we have to think through, like, how can we actually build the type of power that we need, and how can we look at the systemic nature of the root cause of these problems? Why are these companies allowed to have so much power in our society? So you know, some of the lessons learned that I just wanted to really quickly outline are, you know, in order to take on these big companies, we need to build power for the long term across multiple locations. It's obviously needs to be rooted in a strong workplace committee. Without that, we don't have anything, but we need to do that across multiple locations and do it in a sustainable way. We also need to deeply engage our existing membership on the importance of new organizing, and also wield the full strength of our union members to support non-union workers. and fight not just for the interests of our members, but for the entire working class as a whole. So one of the things that the Teamsters has done during this COVID crisis is we created a website called Solidarity is Essential, sharing just know your rights education and materials that non-union workers can use if they need to take action around workplace safety. I think it's really important to engage in whole worker organizing that builds real power both inside the workplace and at the community level around issues that impact the community. So an example of this is the airport communities fight that's happening where Amazon is expanding the airport in Southern California, and it's a community that's predominantly immigrant working class community and one of the highest asthma rates and highest pollution rates in the area, and Amazon's only going to make that worse. What's the impact on the community, et cetera? And the community's coming together, a broad coalition of workers and activists to demand a community benefits agreement there. Also, I think, as Brother Chris already alluded to, we really have to center racial justice because we cannot divorce racism and capitalism to successfully build power against these big multinational corporations like Amazon. We have to address the systemic racism that they profit from and continue to perpetuate. We also need to have like a market-wide approach in each geography. So as I said, not facility by facility, but looking at the entire footprint and how can we build solidarity between workers across different facilities in a given market. And then lastly, I think taking this struggle global and starting from strong local coalitions, but building out from there. And so ultimately it's, the million workers that actually make Amazon function and who've made Bezos his billions. And so I think, it's going to be a tough fight, but when we stand together and we all unite, we can definitely win. So just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here and look forward to this discussion.